할 부분이죠.
This phrase is Nagarjuna's
개송이 용수 나가르주나라는 용수
is Nagarjuna's teaching, and also
법문하신 오도송
and just like
의상 스님께서 쓰신 법성계
Song of Dharma nature, this is also in a similar nature, and after understanding Buddhism up to a certain level, and
깨닫고 나서
it has overview of Buddhism.
도달하고 나서 이게 전체 정리한 내용의 책인데 그 책이 중론이라는 중간
This is Sutra or Abhidhamma of the middle way, and this is very important, and also this is the first line or the first content of the book.
첫 번째 내용인데
All of this part, just one of this part or phrase is you can understand that this is concentrated content of the whole of the middle way. So it is not easy to understand the whole part, but I think it's better that we have a little explanation, and then we will understand what is Buddhism and what does Buddhism aspire for. Buddhism is not something, it's not a religion that is for something else, aspiring for something. Of course, when you enter, when you try to cross to the other side of the river, you depend on the ship, but after you cross, just as after you cross the river, there's no need for you to depend on the ship. And so just like that, there's no reason for you to depend on something and feel relaxed or contented. And Buddhism is not a religion that requires you to depend on something. So whether it's money or whether it is power or whatever it is of the society, whether it is your children or your parents, when we talk about not depending here, it is not. It is that we do not consider them as the ultimate value. So as per the relation, we just meet for a certain period of time. And when we meet our children, then just in our relation with the children, they are the parents because of the relation with the children. But they are never forever the parents, and they are not the parents in their relation with the husbands, or even with their relation with your own parents. So that relation, it is not the ultimate value, and it is a relative value that disappears due to other values. And relying on the relative value like that, it is not essence of Buddhism. While living, because of the relation, we live together for a certain period of time. And if we have attachment for things like that, then these kind of relative values, they will come and they will disappear, even our body. At some time, they will all disappear, and you should not try to console yourself by depending on things like that. They are the very basic of Buddhism. So rather than trying to have a son or a daughter, you should understand them as relative value, and it is more Buddhist to believe that they are not meaningful because they're all relative values as per the Buddha's teaching. The external value of other external things, if we have attachments towards them, and if we tend to believe that the form that we exist right now is actually ours, and our hope to continue with the present existing form is a wrong idea. Everything keeps changing and everything keeps disappearing, and that is our reality, and that is the fact, and that is the truth. There is nothing in this world that doesn't change over ultimate value, and because of that, studying Buddhism is that you are not dependent on anything for your life, but because of the relative value, everything passes by, but in reality, there is nowhere to depend on ultimately. Even your parents, husbands, or anyone in this world, they are not the ultimate value. Even our body form, we know that this doesn't last forever, and they are bound to disappear soon. And even in our consciousness, believing in the ultimate one, and like having absolute belief in Buddha, even they do not have meaning. Then what is meaningful? That no matter how much we believe in the God, or no matter how much we believe in relative value, and we have attachment for them not to change, and we pray and we misunderstand, but there's nothing that they can do anything to us, and even if we live our life in that way, if they do not change, there's nothing that they do not change, and there's nothing that will stay eternally. And because of that, this kind of our activity or behavior, whether it's spiritual and we pray, or to which form ever they change and they are being performed, it is not meaningful. So even person like Johns Hopkins, he said the Earth is about 50 million years old, but however, when you calculate, it's going to last for about 50 million years. There's no need for you to worry about it, because we are the latest ones born to this earth, and we are the youngest one, but we have been born to as the weakest, and we have destroyed the most. And because of that, if we were born about 150 million years back, then there is no possibility for the human population to last for 150 million years more. We take out everything from the earth and we use them and we pollute them, and human beings are those which can destroy the earth, and that's why it could also be difficult for earth to last about 10,000 years, just like how the dinosaurs lived in this earth. During the Jurassic time, they live about 3 to 4 million years, but because of the human nature, it seems like we won't be able to live in this earth for a long time. So there's nothing to worry about, because we human beings are going to destroy ourselves. And even when we consider the global warming right now, we also have reduced our possibility to live for a longer period of time. The water level has already risen, and there are many places which is already under the water, and also when the typhoon comes, they are very strong. So whether it is inside the universe or anywhere else, there's nothing that has the form of eternity. So there's no object for us to have attachments for, but it's just that we are dependent on it. So even Earth is a place where we are just dependent for a certain period of time, but there's nothing to depend forever. Buddhism having this kind of ideology as basis, just as the fact just because all my attachments or my thoughts, they do not change, but we have chosen to live our life in the way that our heart is, because it is true that human beings are born and die. So no matter how much we try to retain from it, we have to go through the natural path. So you try not to die, but no matter how much fear you feel, there is no possibility that they will change. Then there is need for us to study what was the cause for it. Why is it that we cannot change anything at all? But problems like when we cannot change problems like that or any other problems, why do we continue living? All the people living in the past, they lived such a difficult life, and why is it that we have to live a difficult life like that? Buddha has accepted those facts as they are, and those kind of misunderstood thoughts. And what is opposite to misunderstood thoughts? They are the reality, and those reality without any kind of misinterpretation. And if you take them as they are, and if you have been able to take them as they are, then even in front of actual death, there's nothing for you to fear about. You have nothing to fear about because you have no attachments. Nirvana that is there by Buddhism is this kind of facts. We are talking about this kind of meanings, but what Nagarjuna is talking about here, well, there are about 8 things of middle path. Then what is a middle path? When Buddha spoke in the beginning, he talked about the method. He compared it to the musical instrument, saying that it is not proper to study too hard. It is not proper to study too less, but that is not a middle path. What does it mean? It refers to the state where all my greed is disappeared. It's talking about the status itself. In China, in olden time, Samathan, he tried to look at the history as it is. He was actually the instructor in Samathan area, and so he recorded the things as they are, and he tried the readers to see the things as they are. But even that one, it is true that it has been recorded as they are, but we are not really sure if they has been recorded on its own, because the person who has recorded has written his or her opinion. That's why we are not able to find out if it's totally subjective. When we say make your own decisions, that also means try to make your own opinion about something. But the middle way has surpassed all that. I have become meaningless or selfless. So me, myself, and everything that composes me, there's nothing that has the eternity, even Atman. So therefore, the thing or I can always change and always edit and always can die and can be born at any time. So if you know the selflessness of the state, then you can remove yourself from the agony. So you'll be free from death and also life. So when we say the middle way school, they belong to the highest school of voidness, and you need to have a clear understanding of this. Although me myself has not attained the status, we can at least assume or make an estimation that it could be like that. And if you are not able to understand or estimate, then it becomes a more serious problem. Understanding it and becoming it is different. When we read a book about cooking, then we know how to make a stew. But making it on our own, there are many differences. When you try to make it, then most of the time it doesn't turn out the way we want. So the reality or my understanding is different. But having understanding, it provides a platform for the path for it to be achieved. And since Buddha has already opened that path, it could be possible. But in Buddhism, praying and dependent on somewhere and being concerned by it, and if I have attachment to it with my stubbornness, and if you feel that you have been a concern at your heart, Buddhism is never a part of that. When we say concern or to make you feel better, that is just like an effect of a lie. You just feel it momentarily, but nothing really gets solved. And no problem actually gets solved. So when we say how are we going to cure the problem of suffering, then that is actually, we also need to find out the actual way to cure it. So we need to understand the method and also meaning of it. If we don't know them, then we can never be free from the suffering, and we don't even know where we will be in our next life. And our relation with the Buddhism or study or practice will also get more distanced. And you will just believe that going to hell is just a story. But do not say something like that. You will for certainly go there. Just in this mundane world, if you have your greed, then you will definitely go to hell. If things like that doesn't exist, then our life, but there's no need to say about it. If you live for one life and if you die, then, and if you feel there's nothing to discuss about it, then there's nothing serious about it, and there's nothing to consider. But although it's difficult to live, and if you commit suicide, then there's also nothing big about it. But after your death and being reborn again, if you fall into the hell, then it becomes almost impossible for you to return. Even if you fall to the world of animals, that becomes very difficult for you to come back to the present life. Even when you're living as a human, you take from others, and if you have always taken things from others, then next life you might be born as a cat, or you might be born in Africa in a place where you'll be deprived of everything. The things that you have done wrong in your previous life, there's no chance for you to pay back for it, but you are again born in this world and you're eating other animals. And even things like lion, they need to eat animals once in 4 days. And if you say a lion is living for 10 years, then about 10 to 15 years, it's killing about 1,000, has to commit murder for about 1,000 different animals. By living this life, the sins are becoming greater. It's not reducing. That's why it is difficult to come back to the human world. A person can have understanding, and we feel that we should not continue it, and that's why it gives us chance for us to become free. But if you fall into that kind of life, then you will not have the sense to come back to the present life, and you will not even get chance to do it. And because of that, when we do not know the proper order, if our heart doesn't change due to our constant practice, we have to continue changing it or improving it every day by doing our daily practice. If it doesn't change, and if it goes back, it takes back step once again, then it provides us a very good situation for you to ruin your life. Because once you go back home, you want to stay comfortably, you want to rest, you want to eat delicious food. If someone troubles you, then you feel angry and you want to have more savings in your life. And that's our everyday life for most of the people. And most of the people live our life like that. Look at how comfortable the houses are nowadays. And your activities nowadays, think about how many virtuous activities you do. For yourself, you're buying clothes, and for yourself, you're doing things. Doing things for yourself, it is not virtuous. The reason why we get scared or we get shocked is because sometimes when I ask, let's go to teaching, but you tell me, oh, I'm going to China for a tour. But when I you could have answered back that, oh, I have to go because I have meeting. But if it is me, then I would say, sometimes I say, oh, I would rather go to the teaching than the meeting. But then you say, oh, if I don't go for the tour, then they don't pay me back. And that's how your thoughts proceed. All you think about is making money. So even when you're living one day, you need to change your heart. Every day when I ask you to change your heart, I'm asking you to change this kind of heart. At least when you're born in your next life, you need to have a little more luck, and you need to be born as a human at the worst. At the worst, you need to be born as a human. But if you're not being born as a human in your next life, but at least if you're born as a human, and if you have no luck at all, then you'll be born as a beggar, or you'll be born as a slave to someone, or when you got married, you're beaten every day at your home. If your situation changes like that, then do you think that's acceptable? So continuously, if you do not study, then you will continue deteriorating. And when you say deteriorate, it's just that you're living every day your life as per your greed. Because you're living today, you'll be living tomorrow, and you'll be living day after tomorrow. But one day it will come a day when you think that you'll live tomorrow, but tomorrow doesn't come. For sure, one day in front of your death, you'll get scared, and if you have that kind of time in front of you, then that is not how you have lived your life. And that kind of changes. You have to try hard and try to change. And if you don't make your efforts, then it doesn't change. And I am not very kind too. So if you come to me and if you say, sometimes, I can see with my eyes, you come asking me to console you, and you tell me, oh, this and that. When you tell me things like that, then I just listen, and I can And although I say, oh, maybe you're going through a very difficult time, but just because I tell you something wrong, nothing changes. I cannot be of any help. So even once Buddha said, if for me, even in Diamond Sutra, they talk about if we say there's about 1,000 galaxies, the universe is very vast. And in the vast universe, amongst all the galaxies that has been found, they fill it with all kinds of jewelry, amber, diamond, sapphire. Rather than saving them and offering them, it is greater or it is way better to understand one line of a prayer and recite it. So what are we talking about here? To Buddha, the greatest offering is Buddha said, it is becoming like me. There is nothing better offering than that. When we make offering, and when we make offering to the monks and when we offer to teachers, we are doing it as a preparation in order to become like a Buddha. So without forgetting the teachers, we are actually in fact asking you to outcome or understand your teacher. So reciting one mantra of Dharma Sutra is way better than offering jewels to the vast universe. And there is no, and it is nothing to, and there is no value even to compare. Even when you're looking at diamond, what is a diamond? Why is diamond so special? If you give to animals and diamond is of no use at all, they cannot even sleep with this as a pillow, or there's no use to it. And if they eat it, they could have stomach problem, and it is not delicious at all. Because of humans' greed, we have given it a value, and we say the value is great. But I don't think it is anything better than soil. At least to soil we can do plantation, but to diamond we cannot even do a little plantation. So Buddha never said, "Oh, except me, anyone can become Buddha." He said, even at his last breath, he said, "Everyone can become Buddha, so please become like me." After I have become Buddha, after I have achieved Buddha, in this world, nothing can be compared. Not only this world, but in any world, nothing can be changed or compared. And that happiness is nirvana. And to that, if you make a great aspiration, you need to make great aspiration to it. I continue saying this because whether you or me, about 30 years I came to Hunguk Monastery, and over time, the people of your age at the time, most of them died. Everyone. They did not practice hard, but they died without studying a lot. And so you don't have so much time left for you too, and you need to study hard too. Do not waste your time. Habitually, if you continue living, you just live a day or two, and again you will grill some fish and you will eat, and if you're full, then you're happy. And when we ask you to go somewhere, you're very happy to go. Please, at those kind of time, please have a little understanding and self-introspection. Even if someone gives me all monasteries in Korea, to me, honestly, it is nothing greater than a single dust. Is nothing better than looking at one person who is studying. But if you recite mantras well, and if you prostrate as a redemption, and it is nothing better than looking at those students who are actually studying. Even if I have the HR power, and even if they give me all the money of the whole of the Korea, whole of the monasteries in Korea, I will not change it with a person, with one single person who is studying. You understand what I'm trying to say? I will not change it. So, just as what Buddha said, if you are trying to look at me, if you're trying to look at Buddha, you should not look at my body from here. Try to show your awakened spirit. It is a spirit that is free from your agony and your greed. Then you will have a Buddha standing in front of you, a live Buddha. He did not say anything other than that. So the reason why I want to stay in Yeosu, there's only one reason. It is not those kind of social welfare business that I have my hands on, but although people say, oh, you need to stay here in order to maintain the welfare business, the only reason why I did a welfare business here is because I could not come here and just waste my time. And to those people who are going through difficult life, I just wanted to help them by giving them a little stick. While living, that is something that we have to do in our everyday. It is nothing special, isn't it so? It is something that we just have to do every day. If someone is having problem with leg, then don't you go beside them and give them a stick? Isn't that our daily life? The person who doesn't do that is a mean and wicked person. But if you see someone going through trouble, how is it possible that when you see someone who is suffering from hunger, can you feed yourself? It is just that when we act, we just live more like a human. It is not like we are gaining our enlightenment, but your little greed will reduce. So welfare business is something that they can stay within the boundary of Buddhism. But even it is not a boundary of Buddhism, but they can at least have a little understanding that Buddhism is understanding our suffering. Isn't that the practice of Bodhisattva? They are helping me not to fall, but we are trying to help those people so that they can have a little kind of that thought. By doing welfare business, I'm not trying to empower myself with my political power, and I'm not trying to honor myself, and I'm not trying to spread my name. And there's no and what gains will I get? Did someone say it's original stone like Jinok? And a stone is just a stone. Where is original stone? That is not my saying, but Hyunjang called me that. So it might hurt by looking at someone who is going through a difficult time. If it's so selfish, if you have no thought to help the other person who is going through a difficult time, But if you feel that my food is my food, so I'm still going to eat, that is still a mean thing. So if you have no heart to help others, then you know that your heart is very stingy, and because you don't want to do that, you are doing this. I'm doing this. So I'm not trying to get reputation or honor by it. And some people say I'm trying to get good reputation, but the name Jinok is the name that I got after I became a monk. So it is not the name that I was born with, and so I even saw a name, same name with cosmetics, isn't it? I saw it in 여서동, 진옥서. Now let's edit the name. Just put the name and it becomes my name. So I'm not doing welfare business in order to do that. Even the culture thing, I'm trying to do a lot of many cultural activities in Yasu, although I have no money. I'm not doing it to get good reputation, but even things like that, people don't do study at all, and so even with things like that, if maybe not inside of the temple or monastery they would come, but I'm just hoping that they would just try to have some interest to come here, because everyone is just trying to live with their own habits. That's why I'm trying to do that. So if you do not practice, what is practice in a simple word? It is throwing away all the evil hurt and evil habits, and with good heart and good behavior you proceed forward. And if all the behavior becomes all the good deeds and good behaviors without any thoughts or without any calculations, we are asking you to do that until you reach that status, and that is the teaching of Buddhism. Or else there is no reason for me to be here in Yosu. So a farmer goes to farm and do the plantation and plant the weeds and give water, and that is in order to see the plants growing. The next day he goes and have interest. The farmer is going there to see the plants growing. If there is no interest there, if there is no change, and there is no interest, and what's the point? Why would the farmer go to the farm? If all the seeds die and after when it's being planted, then he would just leave the farm and go away. But human beings are like that. They're hurt. Although we keep saying, for so many years my karma has been so thick, and so there's no change. There's nothing like that. Even karma being very thick, I tell you so many times, even if it's very dark, if you switch on the light, it becomes very bright. And what is it? If you have a very big faith, and if you take an action, then you will go one step ahead. You feel that that person could study or not. There's nothing like that. There's no assumption in studying well or not. The only difference or only category that you can make is having big belief and having courage. If you do this, if I do this, then I'll be able to get rid of my agony. If you feel that if by living your life in this way, if you continue living, then you will just remain in the hurt in this life. If you fear that when the time of death comes, you will lose your consciousness, then by the time that you realize, you will know that Buddha has said that there is something that you can change in your life, and all the things that's changing in your heart, I will try to change them. Even if I'm not trying to do it in this life, I will try my best to change up to a certain level. If you have this hurt, and if you if you proceed forward, then in 2 to 3 days or 4 days you will see the change being made. But if you don't, but then if you feel like, if you act like a beer bottle in front of the agency, if you keep floating by, and if you say, oh, I'm busy, so I'm not able to do it, and because I'm old, if I'm not able to do it, and because of money and because of arguments and because of the tours that you have to go, if you're not able to do it,
돈 쓰느라고 못하고 싸우느라고 못하고 꽃가 먹으러 다니라고 놀러 다니느라고 못하고.
so when there are meetings,
내가 그랬어.
some said, oh, I have a meeting this time, but I'm not going to go. And when I asked why, because I went there so many times, but instead of that, why don't you say, oh, I'm not going to go there because I want to study? Then even while the conversation, if you feel that, oh, it's time for me to study and it's time for me to recite the mantras, and if you feel your heart reciting back, then by the look at it, by the look of you, we can say it. Do you do that?
가라는 모습을 이 보면 다 보이잖아. 정진심은 그렇게 하지. 어? 정진심 그렇게 하지.
I think she does that a lot. Her chaos, the chaos that she went through when she was very sick, it has calmed down a lot. It will calm down and it will start organizing, and that is studying, and that is a practice. So even while we have our day-to-day communication, we can recite 건전보살, and your senses will calm down, and you feel that someone else is making comments on you and then you comment back. But without doing that, if you feel Samantha and if your heart is coming down internally, then the wavelength inside your heart will also come down. It will keep coming down. So it gets accumulated 1 or 2 days, and also that's why your prayer and also offering, do not stop them and keep continuing them, and they'll get accumulated, and even for your Samantha's practice, you will have no difficulties and you'll be able to continue them. And so what I mean is not take rest. So until your death, if it has not been achieved, if you think you have not achieved a certain level until the level of Samantha, then until your death, do not lose it and keep continuing it. The thing that I was mesmerized about Tibet is that even when we go to nursing home, 101-year-old, 102-year-old grandmother, she's sitting with a very bent back, just like so bent like an arrow, that if no one helps her to walk, she's not able to walk. But in front of her, there is a little table with Buddha's picture or Dalai Lama picture, and she keeps reciting Om Mani Padme Hum. And when I went and saw it, the way that she was practicing was so beautiful that I said Dashidale. And when I said Dashidale, she just glanced at me and said Dashidale and kept reciting Om Mani Padme Hum. She didn't even bother to ask me where am I from, because her path is very far and she's in a hurry. There was 186 people there, and all of them, their rosary was so worn out that it was shining. And because of that, even in that difficult situation, they were able to tolerate. And so many people has taken the refugee in India, and a lot of them could not adapt to India, and they were dying. But they tried their best not to lose their way to study, and they kept continuing their system, and they kept teaching their disciples, and even when they're going through a very difficult time because nothing to eat, they did not have complex over them, but they were kept studying. And in compared to them, we are eating so well and we are living such a good life. I don't know what is it there for us to expect or desire more.
왜 우리는 거기에 비하면 너무너무 잘 먹고 잘 살잖아. 뭘 그렇게 더 헐떡거리게 있느냐.
There is nothing to expect or there is nothing to desire more for us.
뭘 그렇게 더
As
헐떡거리게.
right now, we have problem because we are too fat and we suffer from obesity, and a lot of people who are so skinny, they're only having problem because they have their control of diet because they're eating well out of choice. But it's not like they have not given them food to eat. There's no one who is going through difficulty because they have not eaten.
빠져서 지가 안 먹어서 그런 것이 지금 누가 못 먹고 안
And
먹어서
because of
그게
that,
되나?
even when we grow old,
없어서
some people complain that I became old, so I'm not able to do it, and because my legs hurt. If you have other things because you got old, then it's good for you to keep them warm. But just because they hurt, if you do not study now, then you will suffer more later in your life. Then what are you going to do about it?
그거 아프다고 정진을 안 해버리면 죽을 때는 그 수천 억만 배 아픈데 어떡할 거야? 두렵고 그래.
So even in your everyday life, do not just stick to where you are, and do not be just contented at where you stand. Even if you pray for 1 hour, then make it 2 hours. And if you have 2 hours, then make it 3 hours. And even on the street, just keep praying. Even when you are making a faith, just pray.
2시간으로 느리고 2시간에서 3시간 느리고 주력하는 건 다니면서도 하고.
And also those relations which are not beneficial to you but only cause you difficulty, just get rid of them.
정말 개떡 같은 인연들, 산만한 인연들은 좀
So
정리해.
if you have time for you to sit, and if you have more time for you to practice, and if you have a heart that's growing bigger for the betterment of all sentient beings, that is good for you. And then only you will continue having changes. And only if you have changes,
내 이기심이 좀 더 잘.
then there will be change in your heart, and even your surroundings will change.
자꾸 변화가 일어나고, 변화가 일어나야 내 마음의 변화가 일어나기 시작하면 주변도 전부 다 변화가 일어나.
You have to study in that manner, then only everything works out. Please do not tell me that it is not possible because you are not able to study.
그렇게 공부를 해야만.
Do not keep making excuses. And if something gets more difficult, then because it's more difficult, you need to study. And if you feel sick, and if you're standing in the borderline, you need to study harder. And if you're busy, then you need to study harder because you will feel that there is problem with the mentality, and that should be the way how it should go.
바쁘면 바쁘니까 이렇게 하다는 정신이 오락가락하겠구나. 또 그러면 더 하고. 그렇게 돼야지.
This morning, I saw it on the newspaper, and it was very well written. Buddhism has been corrupted by money, and this and that. If I had written it, then I would have written 100 times worse than that.
불교가 돈에 타락이 돼가지고 어쩌고 저쩌고 썼는데.
Because Christianity made so much problem, Buddhism was hiding behind it, but
아주 한겹 되면 이만큼 하도 기독교가 개떡을 치니까 불교는 그냥 그 뒤 숨어서 개떡을 좀 똥떡같이 쪄.
in the olden time, during the Korea time, the things that were being criticized, there was a thing that was very was very regretted by one of the monk. Not even Mongol, but it was Arab horse. It was the horse chair was decorated with gold, and when he was walking to the village, then thousands of people would follow. Those people who has power, they have no interest in Buddhism, but they're only interested in spending money, and that's why the Korea Buddhism got corrupted and deteriorated. Right now, they have competition over cars. the Korean Buddhism, if it pays a lot more for the poor people and also for the welfare, some people say it's because we cannot do it because we have no money. But then I said, if you only reduce half the cost for the monks in Korea, then we can help thousands of people. Why don't we have money? If you live a very pure life, then it will become plus alpha because we are living for the betterment of others. A lot of people who has money, they won't contribute to the society, but they don't know how to do it.
그러면 지금 사회에서는 돈을 갖고 있는 사람들이 사회에다 내놓고 싶은데 주는 또 도둑놈 같은데 어떻게 줘? 정말 못 주지.
So that's why we say the lotus, which is blossoming amongst the mud. The lotus does not even have mud or even water. When during the Jeondeon time, when Mr. Kim was being cut by Mr. John, they said he said, "Oh, I have only eaten the dust from it." But then imagine what would happen if he actually tried to corrupt the society. Then look at it. Then lotus does not even have the water because our mind. Because it's standing on its own. If you don't harm it or if you don't dirty it, then nothing would be getting on it. All time is flown. Is 11:57. So because of that, those people who practice about 4 days before, you should never ask the situation for 4 days before. Some people ask me, if your disciples come to you, then why don't you ask them, where are you from, what you've been doing? But to students who have come to study, there is nothing to question them. There is no need to ask them anything. There is no need to look at it. If he has his own pure heart and if he wants to study, then to the monastery, then it becomes we can figure out what he or she has been doing depending on his behavior. What is there to ask? So those people who study, we only look at the present. We don't ask them what happened before. There's no need to ask even what is your first name or last name. There's no difference to it. And for those who want to study, is it possible only for Mr. Kim and not for Mr. Lee? And there's no difference in the color of the skin too. There's no difference in gender. There's nothing like that. The only difference is if you do it or if you not do it. You need to have a bigger heart and serious heart to study it, and other than that, there is no difference. And so for that, why would I ask them? Why would I ask them if you live here and then you won't be able to study? I don't know anything about it. I have no interest and I don't know what the person has been doing in his or her previous life. The only thing is his habits are left there because of the energy that he has lived so far. And then I can only guess from his or her behavior and ask them to change their habits. And there's no need for me to ask them what they have been doing. Some people come to me and show me their resumes and they say that on their doctoral degree. But for me, doctoral degree does not mean anything. Nowadays, all the PhD degrees from college, it's all about education. It's almost like Park Chan-woo throwing the... It's the same thing as baseball players throwing balls to make living, and those people who use brains to make living. So there's no difference. perhaps those sports player they have a less intrigued mind.
그거 도 없어.
If you want to live like that, then there's no other way other than throwing your greed in your heart. And if you do not throw away the greed in your heart, then all the things that you claim that it is for the betterment of others is actually for betterment for you.
전부 남을 위한다는 것이 전부 다 지 위하는 일이 됐거든. 그래서 무주상 보시 얘기가
If you are stagnant at the shape, then every behavior of yours is for the good of you. And if you do that, then there's no difference. Either you do it or not. And even if you do it, then people who receive it, they will not be happy.
해도 받는 사람들이 즐겁지가 않아. 즐겁지가 않아.
And if your hurt is different yesterday and today, so one of the monks said, yesterday a chariot went around in my heart. There was so much space that a chariot could walk around, but today there is not even a space for me to use a needle. That means the space for the agony to float around in your heart has disappeared. Before, it was the space in your heart was so big that even chariots could move around. That whether if I move this side, it'll be more beneficial, or that side more beneficial. But today, after my understanding or after my realization, there's not even a space for the needles to pass through. It has just become one.
깨닫고 나니까 바늘질 틈도
So when you say the spaces become so small that not even a needle could pass through, then there is no space or no thought even for living or to die. That's why we say there is no life or there is no death.
없단 말이야 이게.
Do you understand?
사는구나. 그 생각이 없단 말이야.
Then in that case, even at the time of death,
불생불멸이야.
you just think that with this my life ends, and with that you have no fear or no regrets.
이렇게 해서 이제 끝이 나는구나.
And because of that, because it's one end, because you have only one thought, you become samatha and you achieve vipassana. And because of that, if you look at it,
하나이기 때문에
we say there's no thought of that it is forever, and there's no thought that it breaks. So even that thought itself, if you have the thought that it's going to last forever, then it looks as if there's Atman. But if you die, it's the end. That it becomes as so that after that there is nothing, and all of those and both of those thoughts disappear. And if those two thoughts disappear, then you can see the reality as it is. And how is it like?
그 생각 두 개가 다 없어지면 있는 사실 그대로만.
It's almost like when you're eating food, you can also see if your agony is caused in your mind or not. While eating, if you
이제 밥을 먹을 때도 번뇌를 일으키는지 안 일으키는지 다 알거든. 왜 나와?
if you think that the food is so delicious, so it's very good, then that is actually agony. When you're eating,
밥이 맛있으니까 참 좋네.
just the act of eating, if you should be concentrating at it.
그냥 밥 먹잖아.
I'm not asking you to have attachment and just observe, but there should be no thought other than just eating. So when you're eating, you should not have thoughts like the rice is half cooked or is too watery. You should not think of those things. If your thoughts,
아이고 밥이 뭐.
if other thoughts spring out of the certain thought, then it is not beneficial. So when we say there's no other thought, that means while eating, you should have only one thought, just eating.
그러니까 생각이 왔다 갔다 안 한다는 것은 밥 먹을 때 밥 먹는 그거 외에는 생각이 없는 거야.
Shouldn't be any other
필요
thoughts.
없어. 경계를 당할 때 경계 당한 그 생각 외에는 없단 말이야. 그 외에는 없어.
So maybe that's when I asked Jojo, the teacher, venerable, he said, who is Jojo? Who is monk? and he was only looking at
부처가 뭡니까?
the tree in front of him. But then if there was anything else in front, any other thoughts, then he would have thought that he's the enlightened one. But then when he was looking, he was only staring at one thing. And even before his death, he was about 220 years old, and he is like, where are you from? One guest came and he said, I'm from Sasan. And he asked, did you see the holy light? Seems like his hometown was Sasan.
계기 하나 왔는데
The bell rang and it's 12.
수술을 믿으면 맞는가? 해필이면 고향이 서상이었던가 봐. 12시라고?
So when he asked, you see the holy light, the
그 서상이었던 거, 서상의 상서로 썼잖아요.
he said he had never seen the holy light. That actually means it's enlightenment. But the person, he said, I didn't see any holy light, but then I saw the enlightened one who is lying in front of me. And he got up and said, the tiger has come. And the understanding of the enlightenment is not like you see that you see the enlightenment. But then it's also lie if you say you did not see it. So the understanding, so even at your time of death, you are not able to see it. So I'm just looking at you who is lying in front of me, and when I'm looking at you, there's nothing other than that. So he got up and he answered, the Great One has arrived. When our heart becomes one, through prayers or through mantras, when it becomes one, it enters the status of voidness. The method that it exists in our universe, everything that exists inside of that, if you look at the characteristics, they are not so because there's something with them, but it all happened because of the relations. So if they disappear, then they all become same. And we say, and from the in the beginning, the life tried to live and it sprang out of that. And even this theory, it did not happen because it was there from the first time, but it all became one when we actually try to find myself. But when we try to empty ourselves from it, it's not possible just by trying our attempts to empty, but we need to empty this from with Samantha. And when we say we empty our heart, it lies from there, and it becomes empty. Then we become free from our burdens. There's no saying of coming and going, and even in our heart, there's no thought of coming and going. And also, if you look at it from a broader point of view, even the enlightenment disappears. So even our coming back to our life and going back to our life disappears. So even Buddha said, I have seen very well and now I'm living. So for the betterment of a human being, Buddha has been born to this world. So there is no even coming and going. So if we have reached a certain level in our mind, then there is no more coming and going. So but for us, we come and go all the time. When you come here one day, but then you go home and you say, I'm feel so comfortable because I'm at home. And when you come here, you go through very difficult time. And also there are some people who say, oh, it's very comfortable here. When I go home, I feel very suffocated. That kind of thing also disappears. So all of you, even at your studies, or your relations, do not lose them all the time. You should try your best not to lose them. It's more difficult to live in this mundane life and study. It's more study because you have difficulty bringing up your kid, and because your thoughts also get fluctuated with other things in our life, it's more difficult. That's why it's more difficult than people who has become monk or nun. So even those common people, for them, they need to have a little more situation given to them, then only they can study, or else they only study partially.
더 상근기가 돼야 공부가 돼.
You understand?
자체가 돼버리고 말아.
Or else you just study partially. There's no coming and there's no going, and also it's not same and it's not also not different. Why do we say it's not the same? Because when you look at it, they're all different.
그리고 또 같지도 않고 다르지.
They're all different. But if we say they're all different, but they all look the same.
다 다르죠, 그죠?
So even life is saying that the life is one. And because of that, how do we explain?
그러나 다 같아.
When you say it's the same, it's different, they also become opposite again. So when you look at it from one point of view, then it's not all same
그러면 또 양극단이 돼버려. 그래서
because they're all different. And they are also not very all different because everyone can have understanding. There's no difference in white people and no black people, and even whether it's human or whether it's animals, there's no difference because animals will also become human one day and do understand. It's the same that everyone should follow the Buddhism.
동물들도 언젠가는 사람 돼서 깨달을 거니까.
So in Prajna Paramita, they say there's the voidness inside our heart, it has become so void that you can see what is essentially there. And at this stage, there is no demarcation between life and death.
확 드러난 상태를 갖다 얘기하는 거라 이게.
Nagarjuna, in the very first line, has spoken about this in a very strong manner. And even Usang's
제일 첫머리에다가 그렇게 강력하게 그 얘기를 해놓은 거란 말이야.
all the things existing in this world, sound, light, everything existing, all the characteristics in the Song of Dharma nature, essentially they all arise from one form. And what is that one form? That is the voidness. It all started from the voidness. They have already accepted this even in the study of physics. And because of that, in the end, we say the heart doesn't change. And there shouldn't be a change in the heart. And if there's a change in the heart, and if you keep moving, then we don't call that Buddha. But there should be rigid and there should be stagnant. And then only we call it the study of Buddhism. Then only the Song of Dharma nature, and there's no birth and no death, and everything falls into the same place. Everything living in this earth, they should not sway away, and the actual form, there is no agony and there is no ego. That's what they try to teach us. So this teaching is not only me, and I'm not just saying it, but I have tried my best to find out with what I can benefit you. But other than studying together, I could not come with any other ideas. There's nothing more than you can study. You should at least try to make virtue by studying. Do not come here and ask me to console you. I cannot do nothing for you. I do not know how to dance. I don't know how to sing. I don't have so much money to give to the poor people. It's not like I can give money to other people and say this is money of Buddha. I have only about $100 to $200 in my pocket. And it's obvious not having it, but in Korean society, when we say I have no money to give, then they say, then how are you going to live? But it's not like because I have no money, I have died. It's kind of funny. People die because there's too much money. Because they do many other things because if they have too much money. they keep playing with your car, so they die, and they eat too much and they die, and because they travel around too much, they die. And if there's also too much money for men, then they don't try to spend it somewhere good, but they try to become mayor, and after that they become members of parliament, and that's what they try to do. After saving so much money, and they say, "Oh, I spent about 3 million and became the mayor," and that's what they say. But that's actually a shortcut to your death. After earning so much money, after you become old, why do you do that? It all happened because of your greed. Because of your greed, after you become old, you're being chased away, uh, and you have not even been able to study, but you tend to smile and you go around smiling like that. You should have a genuine smile, and if you have a thought for other human beings, then your behavior would be different. But in the end, it's actually the struggle for your power and your status. And actually, those people who are in the wrong place, they even come there wanting money. And we have also experienced them. And there are also some people who are in the prison because it went wrong. That should not happen. So while living, if we are able to make a lot of money, then we should try to spend it in a good way. But those people with a very small heart, they should not have too much money. If they have a lot of money, then they tend to lean back. So if they have a lot of money and live in a good house and drive a good car, then they should not live just like other poor people. And the moment that they try to live a better life in that way, their life starts falling, because the stones or soil, they start falling from the top of the mountain. So even in the olden time, if you become rich, then you should live more like a poor person, and you should always lower your stance, and you need to spend more, then more money will come to you. But a lot of people does not know this theory. I am telling you this very good theory today. And so what do people say? They say, "Oh, we don't have so much money to lower ourselves," but still you have to do that. Women, when they carry these luxurious bags, which is about $3,000 for a bag. And even I heard that Yu Byung-won, he was wearing 10,000 US dollars worth jacket. But when the body got rotten, it was not even funny. The inside of the body, it was all rotten and it was smelling so bad. But then what is the point if you're wearing a very expensive clothes? And having so much jewelry. And then I thought that house would not last long. Having so much jewelry around and with your head so high, those people walking around like that, I don't think they will last for a long time. Why is it so? The moment you bring yourself up to the high status, then all the luck, they are bound to disappear. That's why it's very difficult for talents or actresses or actors who have money, because their reputation is well known, and so the people who marry them, a lot of people, especially for actresses, a lot of men would just approach them for their money and they would run away. And so the more famous you become, what do you have to do? You have to become simple. And maybe that's why 전원주 is lasting long. to the Buddha's teaching, who has taught us how to understand or how to put down all the meaningless argument in the wall. This kind of all the meaningless arguments, they do not help us remove our agony or remove our attachment at something. So even those famous people, like Hemingway, even those people who they desire to achieve something more knowledgeable, and in the end they commit suicide. So in the end, if you look at each other particularly or essentially, there's nothing remaining. So there should be compassion, and because of the lack of the understanding of the voidness, they commit suicide. In the end, there's nothing left there. And for that, for all the meaningless arguments, putting them to sleep, to the Buddha's teaching, I pay my homage. So all the phenomena arise from dependent arising, and nothing is born, nothing disappears, and nothing is forever, nothing breaks. They're talking about dependent arising and the voidness, and because it happens, all the things because of all this, all the meaningless arguments disappear. Today we finish with one stanza. This saying is actually a very difficult saying. It is actually a very difficult teaching. But actually all the teaching should be just this way. We should not have too much elaboration. Even Buddha, when he was doing his teaching, although he spoke about 45 years, Buddha said in the beginning, but he changed his mind again and again, all the words, but because when he said you have to cross the water, they say, okay, then teach us how to cross the water. And so when Buddha taught them how to make the ship, they said they don't know how to move it. And why is that so? In the end, because when they divided into Hinayana and Mahayana, they could not see it clearly. And when they learned how to use the rope, and then they tried to, and in the end, after they crossed it, it's such precious ship, and so they tried to carry it on their back. But then Buddha said this is just a method, and so leave it there. But they tried to take the boat with them. And so even after giving one method to overcome it, they remove it again, and that continued. It's even in one of the teachings. By changing, he was taking merchants to do their sales, and they refused to move. And so when he took them, saying that there's something better, and then they went there, and now that since the new place is better, they refuse to move. And the next morning when they woke up, they took away everything, and then they were moved to new castle, and they kept going, and in the final destination, when they reached and arrived, when they looked at it, that it was the same place where they started. They were back in their place, back in their home. But what is the difference then and now? At the time, they thought the new place could be better, and so they went around. But now they feel that there's no other place to go, and they understand that that's their heaven. So even changing, what Buddha kept saying was, when he say that's one thing. People have attachments to it and they refuse to budge. And so after curing one disease, the Buddha says do not take them anymore and change it. Same like other doctors.
그렇기 때문에 자꾸
And so when there is certain status,
이제 이거는 먹지 마시오 하고 딱 그도 의사들하고 똑같아. 걷어버리고 그렇게 했단 말이야. 그래서 이제 어느 위치에 오르면
when it's a time when they have reached the place where there is nothing more, then you can stop it. But in the end,
상황에 도달했다 그러면
it's very difficult to reach to the final stage where all your agonies disappear. So until you reach that stage, you need to take care of yourself and strive towards achieving the place. You understand?
무슨 절에 다니는 의미도 부처님 믿은 의미도 아무것도 없어요. 아시겠죠?